Greek mythology is full of drama. Gods hurl thunderbolts, mortals get turned into trees, and someone is always stealing someone else's cattle. But among all these tales, one story stands out for its strange mix of passion and chaos: the romance of Ares, the god of war, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Why does their story matter? Because it's the eternal paradox: love and war, attraction and destruction, beauty and bloodshed, all tangled together. The Greeks didn't just invent myths to entertain. They used them to explain the contradictions of human life. And what's more contradictory than falling in love with someone who spends his days smashing helmets and shouting on battlefields? Ares was the embodiment of raw violence, the clash of swords, the roar of armies. Aphrodite was the embodiment of desire, charm, and irresistible beauty. Put them together, and you get a cosmic soap opera that has fascinated storytellers for thousands of years. Their affair wasn't just scandalous gossip on Olympus. It was a metaphor for the way passion and conflict often walk hand in hand. This story has everything: secret meetings, jealous husbands, divine traps, public humiliation, children who embody both fear and harmony, and even a cameo from the Trojan War. It's messy, it's dramatic, and it's oddly relatable. Because, let's be honest, who hasn't seen two people fall for each other, even though they're complete opposites? So, tonight, as you drift into sleep, we'll wander slowly through their tale. We'll meet Ares in his fiery armor, Aphrodite rising from the sea foam, and watch as love and war collide in ways both hilarious and profound. If you enjoyed this slow stroll into Olympus gossip, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments from where you're watching from. Bonus points if you're tuning in from a battlefield or a bubble bath, because honestly, that's the most authentic way to experience this story. To understand the fiery romance of Ares and Aphrodite, we first need to linger on the beginnings of Ares himself. His birth was not just another divine arrival. It was the introduction of conflict into the very fabric of Olympus. Ares was born to Zeus, the thunder-wielding king of the gods, and Hera, the queen whose pride and sharp temper were legendary. From the moment of his arrival, Ares embodied the raw, untamed energy of battle. Unlike Athena, who represented the cleverness of strategy and the wisdom of planning, Ares was the roar of war itself, the clash of bronze against bronze, the cries of soldiers, the chaos of combat. The Greeks often painted him as reckless, a god who leaped into fights without thought. He was not admired for wisdom or restraint. Instead, he was feared, respected, and sometimes mocked. In Homer's Iliad, even Zeus calls him hateful because of his constant thirst for conflict. Yet, despite this reputation, Ares was essential. He represented the unavoidable truth that war is part of human existence, brutal, destructive, but ever present. His temperament was fiery, his presence overwhelming. Imagine a storm rolling across a battlefield, dust rising, shields clashing, and the air thick with tension. That storm was Ares. He was not the careful general, but the soldier who charged headlong, driven by passion and rage. His very birth symbolized that war was not born of reason, but of raw emotion. The Romans later reshaped him into Mars, giving him dignity, honor, and a central role in their culture. But in Greece, Ares remained the embodiment of chaos. He was the god who could be defeated by clever mortals, humiliated by trickster gods, yet still feared because of the destruction he carried. His arrival into the world set the stage for everything that followed. Without Ares, there would be no balance to Aphrodite's charm, no counterpoint to her beauty. His existence was necessary, because only through the god of war could the goddess of love find her most unlikely partner. And so Ares entered Olympus, not as a beloved child, but as a force of nature. His birth was the beginning of a story where passion and violence would intertwine, leading eventually to the scandalous union that defined him forever. If Ares was born from thunder and temper, Aphrodite's arrival was something altogether different, softer, stranger, and far more enchanting. Her birth is one of the most famous and mysterious episodes in Greek mythology, and it set her apart from every other Olympian. According to the most widely told version, Aphrodite was born not from the union of Zeus and Hera, nor from any ordinary divine parentage, but from the sea itself. When the Titan Cronus overthrew his father Uranus, he cast Uranus's severed parts into the ocean. From the foam that rose upon the waves, Aphrodite emerged, radiant, beautiful, and irresistible. She was carried to shore on a shell, gliding across the waters, as though the sea itself had chosen to present her to the world. This image of Aphrodite rising from the foam became iconic. Poets described her as dazzling, artists painted her as serene, and later cultures borrowed the vision endlessly. She was not born in violence, but her origin was tied to it, a reminder that beauty often springs from chaos. Where Ares embodied the clash of war, Aphrodite embodied the calm after the storm, the allure that follows destruction. Other traditions tell a simpler story, that she was the daughter of Zeus and Dione. In this version, she is less mysterious, more conventional, but still powerful. Yet the sea foam birth remained the most beloved, because it captured her essence, a goddess who seemed to belong to no one, who arrived as if nature itself had decided that beauty must exist. From the moment of her birth, Aphrodite's presence was overwhelming. The gods marveled at her charm, mortals longed for her favor, and even the winds and waves seemed to bend toward her. She was not just beautiful, she was the embodiment of desire, attraction, and the force that draws beings together. Her arrival balanced the cosmos. Where Ares brought division, Aphrodite brought union. Where war tore things apart, love stitched them back together. The Greeks saw in her birth the promise that beauty and desire were as fundamental to existence as conflict and rage. And so, Aphrodite stepped into the world not as a child of Olympus, but as a gift of the sea. Her birth was a reminder that love is elemental, eternal, and beyond the control of even the greatest gods. She was destined to charm, to inspire, and eventually to entangle herself with the god of war in one of mythology's most enduring stories. When we place Ares and Aphrodite side by side, the contrast is almost too perfect. He was the god of war, the embodiment of rage and destruction. She was the goddess of love, the embodiment of beauty and desire. Together, they were like fire and water, storm and calm, chaos and harmony. Ares thrived in the noise of battle. His essence was the clash of shields, the cries of warriors, the dust rising from trampled earth. He represented the raw, unfiltered violence of conflict, not the careful planning of generals, but the surge of emotion that drives armies forward. His nature was heavy, fiery, and relentless. Aphrodite, by contrast, thrived in silence and allure. Her essence was the gentle glance that sparks desire, the charm that bends hearts, the beauty that makes even gods pause. She represented attraction, union, and the force that draws beings together. Where Ares divided, Aphrodite united. Where war tore apart, love stitched together. The Greeks saw in their pairing a paradox that mirrored human life. Love and war are opposites, yet they often walk hand in hand. Desire can lead to conflict. Conflict can stir passion. The battlefield and the bedroom, though worlds apart, share the same intensity of emotion. Philosophers later reflected on this union as symbolic. Ares without Aphrodite was destruction without purpose. Aphrodite without Ares was beauty without fire. Together, they embodied the tension between attraction and aggression, the eternal dance of opposites. Artists painted them side by side, one armored and fierce, the other radiant and serene. Poets wrote of their affair as both scandalous and inevitable. The gods themselves laughed at their union, yet could not deny its strange harmony. Their opposite natures were not just a curiosity, they were a lesson. The Greeks believed that life was built on balance, day and night, order and chaos, love and war. Ares and Aphrodite were living proof that even the most unlikely opposites could find themselves entangled, shaping myths that would endure for centuries. To understand why Ares was such a complicated figure in Greek mythology, we must linger on his personality, fiery, restless, and often overwhelming. Unlike Athena, who embodied wisdom and careful strategy, Ares was the raw surge of emotion that drives men into battle. He was not the general who planned campaigns. He was the soldier who leaped forward, sword raised, heart pounding, eager for the clash. The Greeks described him as impulsive, quick to anger, and difficult to restrain. He thrived on the noise of war, the cries of warriors, the clash of bronze, the dust rising from trampled earth. His temperament was not calm or measured. It was stormy, unpredictable, and often destructive. He was the embodiment of passion without thought, force without balance. This fiery nature made him both feared and ridiculed. In Homer's Iliad, even Zeus calls him hateful because of his constant thirst for conflict. The other gods often mocked him, and mortals prayed to him more out of fear than devotion. Yet despite this reputation, Ares was essential. He represented the unavoidable truth that war is part of human existence, brutal, chaotic, but ever present. His personality was also deeply emotional. Ares was not cold or detached. He felt everything intensely. Rage consumed him, but so did love, jealousy, and desire. This intensity made him vulnerable, often leading to humiliations at the hands of clever gods or brave mortals. He was defeated by Athena, tricked by Hephaestus, and wounded by Diomedes. Yet he always returned, driven by the same unstoppable force that defined him. The Romans later reshaped him into Mars, giving him dignity, honor, and a central role in their culture. But in Greece, Ares remained the embodiment of chaos. He was the god who could be defeated, mocked, and scorned, yet still feared because of the destruction he carried. His temperament was not admirable, but it was real, a reflection of the raw emotions that drive human conflict. And so, Ares' personality was both his strength and his weakness. His fiery nature made him powerful, but also reckless. His passion made him dangerous, but also strangely human. He was not the god of victory, but the god of struggle, the endless, exhausting clash that defined both gods and mortals. If Ares embodied the roar of battle, Aphrodite embodied the quiet pull of attraction. Her power was not in weapons or armies, but in the invisible threads that bind hearts together. To the Greeks, she was more than beautiful. She was the very force of desire itself, shaping the choices of gods and mortals alike. Aphrodite's domain stretched across every corner of existence. She influenced marriages, romances, friendships, and even political alliances. A glance from her could soften anger. A whisper could spark longing, and her presence could turn even the most stubborn heart toward passion. Where Ares divided, Aphrodite united. Where war tore apart, love stitched together. Her influence was not always gentle. Desire can be overwhelming, and Aphrodite's touch could lead to jealousy, rivalry, and chaos. Heroes in myths often found themselves distracted or undone by love, and gods themselves were not immune. Zeus, Poseidon, Hermes, all were swayed by her charm at one time or another. She was irresistible, not because she forced affection, but because she awakened it. The Greeks saw her as a reminder that love is both blessing and burden. It can inspire poetry, build families, and create harmony, but it can also stir conflict, drive betrayal, and ignite wars. The Trojan War itself, one of the greatest tales of Greek myth, began with Aphrodite's promise to Paris that he would win the love of Helen. Her domain was vast, and its consequences reached far beyond the bedroom. Aphrodite was also tied to beauty itself. She was the goddess who made flowers bloom, who stirred the seas to calm, who inspired artists and poets. Her presence was felt in every act of creation, every moment of admiration, every sigh of longing. She was not just a goddess of romance, but of the aesthetic force that makes life worth living. Her temples were filled with offerings, her festivals celebrated with joy. Mortals prayed to her for love, for fertility, for companionship. They believed that without her favor, life would be lonely, barren, and incomplete. With her blessing, it could be full, harmonious, and radiant. And so, Aphrodite's domains stretched far beyond Olympus. She was the goddess who touched every heart, who shaped every bond, who reminded mortals and gods alike that love is as powerful as war, as eternal as the sea, and as unpredictable as desire itself. Before Aphrodite's scandalous affair with Ares could unfold, she was first bound in marriage to another god, Hephaestus, the master of fire, the forge, and craftsmanship. This union puzzled many in Greek mythology. Why would the goddess of beauty, charm, and irresistible desire be paired with the god of hammers, anvils, and smoke-filled workshops? Hephaestus was unlike the other Olympians. He was not radiant or glamorous. In fact, myths often described him as lame, his gait uneven, his appearance rough compared to the shining figures of Zeus or Apollo. Yet he possessed something extraordinary: skill. His hands could shape bronze into armor, gold into delicate chains, and iron into weapons that even gods admired. He was the artisan of Olympus, the one who built palaces, thrones, and tools for the immortals. The marriage between Aphrodite and Hephaestus was arranged, not born of passion. Some myths say Zeus himself decreed it, hoping to keep Aphrodite's charm contained, to prevent endless rivalries among the gods who longed for her. By binding her to Hephaestus, Zeus thought he had solved the problem, but in truth, he had only created another. Aphrodite's nature was desire, attraction, and freedom. She thrived on admiration, on the pull of hearts toward her. Hephaestus, though devoted, could not match her radiance. His love was steady but unglamorous, his devotion sincere but unexciting. The goddess of love found herself tied to a god of labor, and the imbalance was obvious. This marriage became symbolic in Greek thought. It showed that beauty and skill could be joined, but not always harmoniously. Aphrodite represented allure, Hephaestus represented craftsmanship. Together, they embodied the union of charm and creation, but without the spark of passion. The Greeks often portrayed Aphrodite as restless in this marriage. She accepted Hephaestus' gifts, jewelry, thrones, and golden adornments, but her heart wandered. The gods whispered about her discontent, and mortals told stories of her longing for someone who matched her intensity. That someone, of course, would be Ares. And so, the marriage of Aphrodite and Hephaestus was less a love story and more a cautionary tale. It was a union of convenience, a bond forged by decree rather than desire. It set the stage for the scandal to come, because when love is bound without passion, it seeks release elsewhere. The marriage of Aphrodite and Hephaestus may have been forged by decree, but the goddess of love was never meant to be contained. Her nature was desire, attraction, and freedom, and it was only a matter of time before her heart wandered. In the shadows of Olympus, away from the watchful eyes of her husband, Aphrodite found herself drawn to the one god who matched her intensity in a completely different way, Ares, the god of war. Their affair began quietly, almost inevitably. Ares was everything Hephaestus was not: fiery, passionate, impulsive, and unrestrained. Where Hephaestus offered steady devotion, Ares offered raw emotion. Aphrodite, radiant and restless, was captivated by his energy. The goddess of love and the god of war were opposites, yet their attraction was undeniable. The Greeks imagined their secret meetings as charged with both danger and desire. Aphrodite, shimmering with beauty, would slip away from her husband's forge, while Ares, armored and fierce, would leave the battlefield behind. Together, they created a union that was both scandalous and symbolic. Love and war, charm and chaos, united in secret. The affair was not just about passion, it was about balance. Aphrodite softened Ares' rage, calming the storm that defined him. Ares gave Aphrodite intensity, a fire that matched her allure. Their relationship was a paradox, but it was also a harmony of opposites. The Greeks saw in their union the eternal truth that desire and conflict often walk hand in hand, yet secrecy defined their love. They knew the gods would laugh, that Hephaestus would rage, that their affair would bring scandal to Olympus. Still, they continued, drawn together by forces stronger than fear. The goddess of love and the god of war could not resist each other, and their hidden romance became one of the most enduring tales of Greek mythology. This chapter of their story was not about exposure or humiliation that would come later. For now, it was about the thrill of secrecy, the quiet moments stolen in the shadows, the irresistible pull of opposites who found themselves entangled. It was the beginning of a romance that would shake Olympus, inspire poets, and remind mortals that love and war are never far apart. Every secret affair needs a witness, and in the case of Ares and Aphrodite, that witness was none other than Helios, the god of the sun. Helios was not a meddler by nature. His role was simply to ride his golden chariot across the sky each day, illuminating the world below. But because he saw everything from dawn to dusk, he became the silent observer of countless divine intrigues. The Greeks imagined Helios as ever watchful, his eyes sweeping across the heavens and the earth. Nothing escaped his gaze, not the movements of mortals, not the schemes of gods, and certainly not the secret meetings of Ares and Aphrodite. While the lovers thought themselves hidden, slipping away from Olympus into quiet corners, Helios' light revealed all. It was not malice that drove him to notice their affair. It was simply his nature. The sun cannot help but shine, and in shining, it exposes what lies in shadow. Helios became the embodiment of truth, the reminder that no secret can remain hidden forever. In mythology, Helios eventually revealed the affair to Hephaestus. Imagine the scene, the god of the forge, already suspicious, hearing from the sun itself that his wife was meeting Ares in secret. The revelation was devastating, but it was also inevitable, for in a world where gods embody forces of nature, the sun was the ultimate witness. Helios' role in the story is subtle but profound. He represents the idea that passion, no matter how carefully concealed, will eventually be seen. The light uncovers what the night tries to hide. The Greeks understood this as a lesson. Desire may be powerful, but secrecy cannot endure against truth. And so, Helios became the turning point in the tale. His watchful gaze transformed a private romance into a public scandal. Without him, the lovers might have continued in secrecy. With him, their affair was destined to be exposed, setting the stage for Hephaestus' famous trap and the laughter of Olympus. Every great scandal in mythology needs a clever twist, and in the story of Ares and Aphrodite, that twist came from Hephaestus, the god of the forge. Though he was not radiant or glamorous like the other Olympians, Hephaestus possessed something far more dangerous: ingenuity. His mind was sharp, his hands skilled, and his craft unmatched. When Helios revealed the secret affair between his wife and Ares, Hephaestus did not rage blindly. Instead, he began to plan. The forge became his sanctuary of revenge. Surrounded by fire, smoke, and the ringing of hammers, Hephaestus worked tirelessly to create a trap unlike any other. He did not choose weapons or chains of iron. Instead, he forged a net, delicate, invisible, and unbreakable. It was woven from the finest strands of bronze, so thin that they could not be seen, yet so strong that even gods could not escape. This net was not meant for mortals. It was designed to ensnare immortals, to humiliate them, to expose them before all of Olympus. Hephaestus poured his skill, his anger, and his wounded pride into every link. The result was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, a web of divine justice. When the net was complete, Hephaestus set his plan into motion. He placed it carefully over the bed where Aphrodite and Ares met in secret. The lovers, unaware of the trap, slipped into their embrace, believing themselves hidden from the world. But as they lay together, the net fell upon them, binding them in its unbreakable strands. Imagine the scene: the goddess of love and the god of war, caught in a shimmering web, unable to move, unable to escape. Their passion turned instantly to panic, their secrecy shattered. Hephaestus had not only trapped them physically, he had trapped them in shame. The golden net was more than a clever invention. It was a symbol of Hephaestus' power, a reminder that skill and intelligence could triumph over beauty and strength. It showed that even gods could be humbled, that desire could lead to downfall, and that betrayal could be answered with cunning rather than violence. This moment set the stage for one of the most famous episodes in Greek mythology, the public exposure of Ares and Aphrodite before the entire pantheon. The trap was not just a personal act of revenge. It was a spectacle, a lesson, and a story that would echo through centuries. The trap was sprung, and the lovers were caught. Yet the true sting of Hephaestus' plan was not simply the net itself, but the humiliation that followed. For when Ares and Aphrodite lay bound together in the shimmering strands of bronze, Hephaestus did not keep the secret to himself. He summoned the gods of Olympus to witness the scandal. Imagine the scene, the great hall of the immortals filled with laughter, whispers, and astonishment. The goddess of love and the god of war, once so proud, now tangled helplessly in a web of their own desire. The net glistened like sunlight on water, holding them fast, while the other gods gathered around to mock and marvel. Poseidon, lord of the sea, looked on with a mixture of amusement and pity. Hermes, ever the trickster, could not resist a sly grin, joking that he would gladly take Ares' place if given the chance. Apollo, radiant and aloof, observed with a poet's detachment, noting how even beauty and strength could be undone by cleverness. Even Zeus, the king of the gods, laughed at the sight, though his laughter carried the weight of judgment. The shame was overwhelming. Ares, who thrived on battlefields, now found himself powerless, mocked by those he had once fought beside. Aphrodite, whose charm had swayed gods and mortals alike, now lay exposed, her allure turned into a spectacle. The net did not simply bind their bodies, it bound their reputations, turning passion into ridicule. This episode became one of the most famous tales in Greek mythology, retold by poets and dramatists for centuries. It was not just a scandal, it was a lesson. The gods themselves were not immune to folly. Desire could lead to downfall, pride could lead to humiliation, and even the most radiant figures could be mocked when their secrets were revealed. Yet the laughter of Olympus was not entirely cruel. Beneath the ridicule lay a recognition of truth. Love and war, passion and chaos, are forces that cannot be contained. The gods laughed because they saw themselves reflected in the lover's plight. They too were driven by desire, by jealousy, by folly. Ares and Aphrodite were not alone in their weakness. They were simply the most visible example. And so, the public shame of Olympus became a story not of destruction, but of exposure. It reminded mortals and immortals alike that even gods stumble, that even beauty and strength can be humbled, and that the balance of love and war is always precarious. The union of love and war did not remain hidden in secrecy alone. It produced offspring who carried within them the strange blend of their parents' natures. From the passionate encounters of Ares and Aphrodite came children who embodied both harmony and terror, desire and fear. Each child reflected a different aspect of the paradox that defined their parents. The most famous among them was Eros, known later to the Romans as Cupid. Eros was the god of desire, armed with golden arrows that could stir love in the hearts of gods and mortals alike. His presence was playful yet powerful, a reminder that attraction could strike suddenly, without warning, and change the course of lives. In him, Aphrodite's charm and Ares' intensity combined into a force that was irresistible and sometimes dangerous. Then came Phobos and Deimos, whose names meant fear and terror. These twin sons were inseparable from their father Ares, often depicted riding beside him into battle. They were not gods of strategy or victory, but of the emotions that grip soldiers when war begins. Phobos was the dread that makes the heart race, Deimos the panic that scatters armies. Together, they showed that war is not only fought with weapons, but with emotions that overwhelm the mind. From the same union came Harmonia, a daughter whose very name meant harmony. She was the opposite of her brothers, embodying balance, peace, and reconciliation. Harmonia's presence was calming, her role symbolic of the possibility that love and war could produce not only chaos, but also unity. She was often associated with marriage, with the bonds that bring people together, and with the hope that even conflict could lead to resolution. Other children were sometimes named in different traditions, each carrying echoes of their parents' paradox. Some were minor figures, others more symbolic, but all reflected the strange union of passion and destruction. The offspring of Ares and Aphrodite were not just characters in myths, they were symbols. Eros represented the sudden strike of desire, Phobos and Deimos, the overwhelming emotions of battle. Harmonia, the balance that follows conflict. Together, they showed that from the union of opposites comes a spectrum of forces, some terrifying, some beautiful, all deeply human. And so, the children of love and war became part of the tapestry of Greek mythology, reminders that passion and conflict are not isolated forces. They intertwine, they produce new realities, and they shape the stories that mortals told for generations. Among the children of Ares and Aphrodite, none carried the mark of their father's battlefield presence more clearly than Phobos and Deimos. Their names alone tell the story. Phobos, meaning fear, Deimos, meaning panic or terror. These twin sons were not gods of victory or triumph, but of the emotions that grip soldiers when war begins. In Greek imagination, Phobos and Deimos were inseparable from Ares. Whenever the god of war rode into battle, they accompanied him, swift and shadowy, spreading dread among armies. They were not physical warriors themselves, but forces of the mind. Phobos was the chill that runs down the spine before combat, the dread that makes hands tremble. Deimos was the sudden panic that scatters formations, the overwhelming terror that breaks courage. Together, they were the invisible weapons of war. The symbolism of these figures was profound. The Greeks understood that battles were not won or lost by strength alone. Fear could unravel even the bravest army. Panic could turn order into chaos. By giving these emotions divine form, they acknowledged that war was not only fought with swords and shields, but with the human heart and mind. Phobos and Deimos also reflected the paradox of their parents. From Aphrodite came attraction, from Ares came destruction. Their sons embodied the darker side of passion, the way desire can twist into anxiety, the way intensity can become overwhelming. Just as love can inspire courage, it can also stir fear of loss. The twins were reminders that emotions are double-edged, capable of both strength and ruin. In art and poetry, Phobos and Deimos were often depicted as companions to Ares, riding beside his chariot, their presence magnifying his fury. They were not celebrated like Eros or Harmonia, but they were essential. Without fear, war would lose its tension. Without panic, conflict would lose its unpredictability. The Greeks saw them as forces that shaped not only battlefields, but everyday life. Fear and panic were part of human existence, unavoidable and powerful. By naming them, by giving them divine identity, the Greeks acknowledged their influence. Phobos and Deimos were not villains, but truths, reminders that even the strongest are vulnerable to the emotions that rise in moments of crisis. And so, the symbolism of fear and panic became woven into the story of Ares and Aphrodite. Their children showed that love and war do not only produce harmony or desire, but also dread and terror. It was a lesson that passion, whether in romance or in battle, always carries shadows alongside its light. After the storm of fear and panic embodied by Phobos and Deimos, the union of Ares and Aphrodite produced a child of a very different nature, Harmonia. Her very name meant harmony, and she stood as a gentle counterbalance to the chaos of her brothers. Where they spread dread across battlefields, Harmonia brought calm, reconciliation, and peace. The Greeks saw Harmonia as a symbol of balance. She was the reminder that even from the most unlikely union, war, and love, something serene could emerge. Her presence suggested that conflict does not always end in destruction. Sometimes it gives way to resolution. Just as storms clear the air, so too could the clash of opposites produce harmony. Harmonia was often associated with marriage and unity. She represented the bonds that tie people together, the agreements that heal divisions, the peace that follows discord. In myths, she was sometimes given as a bride to Cadmus, the founder of Thebes, and their union was marked by both blessings and curses. Yet, even in tragedy, Harmonia's role was clear. She embodied the hope that love and war could coexist, that balance could be found even in turmoil. Her symbolism extended beyond myth into philosophy. The Greeks believed that the cosmos itself was built on harmony, the balance of opposites, the blending of forces, the music of spheres. Harmonia was not just a daughter of gods. She was a reflection of the universal principle that order can arise from chaos. In art, she was depicted as serene, radiant, often holding symbols of unity. Unlike her brothers, who rode beside Ares in terror, Harmonia stood apart, embodying calm. She was the gentle reminder that passion and conflict, though powerful, are not the only outcomes of love and war. Balance, peace, and reconciliation are equally possible. And so, Harmonia became the soothing presence in the story of Ares and Aphrodite. She showed that their union was not only scandal and chaos, but also the possibility of resolution. From love and war came not only fear and desire, but also harmony, a reminder that even the most turbulent forces can produce calm. The story of Ares and Aphrodite does not remain confined to Olympus gossip. Their presence spills into one of the greatest tales of Greek mythology, the Trojan War. This legendary conflict, immortalized in Homer's Iliad, was not only a clash of armies, but also a stage where gods and goddesses revealed their loyalties, passions, and rivalries. Among them, Ares and Aphrodite played roles that reflected their very natures: war and love, destruction and desire. Ares, true to his essence, fought alongside the Trojans. He was drawn to the chaos of battle, the roar of armies, the clash of bronze. His presence on the battlefield was not subtle. He charged with fury, inspiring dread, accompanied by his sons Phobos and Deimos, who spread fear and panic among soldiers. Yet, as often in Greek myth, Ares was not invincible. He was wounded by Diomedes, a mortal hero, aided by Athena, and forced to retreat. This humiliation showed that even the god of war could be overcome by courage and strategy. Aphrodite's role was very different. She did not wield weapons or lead armies. Instead, when Paris faced danger, Aphrodite intervened, whisking him away from battle, shielding him from harm, and ensuring his survival. Her influence was not in the clash of swords, but in the bonds of desire. By promising Paris the love of Helen, she had set the entire conflict in motion. Together, their influence revealed the paradox of love and war. Ares embodied the violence of the battlefield, Aphrodite the passion that ignited it. The war was not only fought with spears and shields, but also with longing, jealousy, and desire. The Greeks understood that conflict often begins not with armies, but with hearts. Their roles in the Trojan War also reflected their relationship. Ares fought fiercely, but his efforts were often undone by the cleverness of Athena and the bravery of mortals. Aphrodite protected Paris, but her interventions were mocked by other gods, who saw her as meddling in matters beyond her domain. Yet together they shaped the war, reminding mortals that love and battle are inseparable forces. The Trojan War became a stage where the union of Ares and Aphrodite was played out in grand scale. Their presence showed that passion and conflict are not opposites, but companions. Desire can spark wars, and wars can be fought for love. In their influence, the Greeks saw the eternal truth. Human life is always caught between attraction and aggression, between longing and struggle. The union of Ares and Aphrodite was more than a scandal. It was a living paradox. Their relationship embodied one of the deepest contradictions in human nature. The way love and battle, attraction and conflict often exist side by side. To the Greeks, this was not simply gossip about the gods, it was a reflection of life itself. Ares represented the raw force of war. His presence was fire and fury, the clash of armies, the roar of battle. He thrived in destruction, in the breaking of bonds, in the chaos that divides. Aphrodite, by contrast, represented beauty, desire, and union. Her presence was harmony, the gentle pull that draws hearts together, the charm that heals divisions. When they came together, it was as if two opposite forces collided, yet instead of canceling each other out, they created something strangely compelling. This contradiction mirrored the human experience. Love can inspire courage, but it can also spark jealousy and rivalry. War can destroy, but it can also be fought for love, for loyalty, for passion. The Greeks understood that these forces were not separate, but intertwined. Desire could lead to conflict, and conflict could intensify desire. Ares and Aphrodite were the divine embodiment of this truth. Their relationship also revealed the fragility of balance. Love without struggle can feel too easy, too fragile. War without passion becomes hollow, mechanical. Together, they showed that human life is built on tension, the push and pull of attraction and aggression, the dance of harmony and chaos. Poets and philosophers reflected on this paradox. Some saw it as a warning. Passion can lead to downfall. Desire can ignite wars. Others saw it as a lesson. Even in conflict, love can emerge. Even in passion, struggle is inevitable. The gods themselves laughed at their affair, but beneath the laughter lay recognition. They too were driven by these forces, caught between longing and rivalry, affection and anger. The contradiction of love and battle was not meant to be resolved. It was meant to be lived, acknowledged, and understood. Ares and Aphrodite did not offer a simple answer. They offered a mirror. In their union, mortals saw themselves torn between tenderness and fury, between the desire to embrace and the urge to fight. And so, their relationship became more than myth. It became a symbol of the eternal truth that love and war are not opposites, but companions. They walk together, shaping lives, shaping stories, shaping the very fabric of existence. Though Ares is most often remembered for his scandalous affair with Aphrodite and his humiliations at the hands of clever gods, his story stretches far beyond that single romance. In later myths, Ares continued to appear as a figure of raw violence, passion, and conflict, sometimes feared, sometimes mocked, but always present as the embodiment of war itself. In Homer's Iliad, Ares is shown charging into battle with reckless fury. He fights alongside the Trojans, his sons Phobos and Deimos at his side, spreading fear and panic across the battlefield. Yet even here, his strength is not absolute. He is wounded by the mortal hero Diomedes, aided by Athena, and forced to retreat to Olympus in pain. This moment revealed the vulnerability of the god of war, powerful but not invincible, driven by emotion rather than strategy. Other myths portray Ares as a god who often found himself defeated or humiliated. He was captured by the twin giants, Otus and Ephialtes, bound in chains for months until Hermes rescued him. He was mocked by other gods for his impulsive nature, contrasted constantly with Athena's calm wisdom, where Athena represented the noble side of battle, discipline, planning, and justice. Ares represented its chaos, its bloodshed, its uncontrollable rage. Yet Ares was not without honor. In some traditions, he was worshipped as a protector of soldiers, a god who embodied courage and the willingness to fight. The Spartans, in particular, revered him, seeing in his fury the spirit of their own warrior culture. To them, Ares was not a figure of ridicule, but of strength, a reminder that war was not only destructive, but also necessary for survival. The Romans later transformed him into Mars, giving him dignity and respect. Mars became a central figure in Roman culture, tied to agriculture, fatherhood, and the founding of Rome itself. This reimagining showed how the god of war could be reshaped to reflect different values, from reckless destruction in Greece to disciplined strength in Rome. In all these later myths, Ares remained a paradox. He was feared yet mocked, powerful yet vulnerable, essential yet despised. He was not the god of victory, but the god of struggle, the endless clash that defined both gods and mortals. His presence reminded the Greeks that war is not glorious, but chaotic, driven by passion and rage. And so, Ares lived on in myth as a figure both terrifying and tragic. His later stories showed that even gods can be flawed, that power without wisdom leads to downfall, and that the fire of battle, though destructive, is an eternal part of existence. While Ares was remembered for his fiery battles and humiliations, Aphrodite's legacy stretched far beyond her affair with the god of war. Her influence was timeless, woven into the lives of gods and mortals alike, shaping desires, unions, and even the course of history. Unlike Ares, whose power was confined to the battlefield, Aphrodite's reach extended into every corner of existence. From the moment of her birth, Aphrodite was irresistible. She was not simply admired for her beauty. She embodied the very force of attraction itself. Mortals prayed to her for love, for companionship, for fertility. Kings sought her favor to secure alliances. Poets invoked her name to inspire verses, and artists painted her image to capture the essence of desire. She was the goddess who made hearts stir, who reminded mortals that longing and affection were as powerful as swords and shields. Her influence was not limited to mortals. The gods themselves were swayed by her charm. Zeus, Poseidon, Hermes, All were touched by her allure at one time or another. Even Hera, queen of Olympus, feared her power, knowing that Aphrodite could bend hearts and minds with a glance. She was not a warrior, yet she could change the outcome of wars simply by stirring passion or jealousy. The Trojan War itself was a testament to her influence. By promising Paris the love of Helen, she set in motion one of the greatest conflicts in myth. Her gift was irresistible, but it carried consequences that echoed for generations. This showed that love, though gentle in appearance, could be as destructive as war. Desire could topple kingdoms, beauty could ignite battles, and passion could reshape the fate of nations. Yet Aphrodite was not only a goddess of chaos, she was also a goddess of creation. She inspired marriages, families, and bonds that endured. She was present in every act of affection, every moment of tenderness, every union that brought harmony. Her power was double-edged, capable of both destruction and healing, but always essential. Her continuing influence was also seen in art and culture. Statues of Aphrodite became some of the most celebrated works of antiquity, capturing her serene beauty. Poets wrote endlessly of her charm. Philosophers debated the nature of love she embodied, and festivals honored her with joy and devotion. She was not a passing figure. She was eternal, her presence felt in every generation. And so, Aphrodite's influence endured long after her affair with Ares. She was not defined by scandal alone, but by the timeless truth she represented, that love is elemental, irresistible, and eternal. Where Ares embodied the clash of war, Aphrodite embodied the pull of desire. Together, they showed the paradox of human life, but apart, Aphrodite remained a force that shaped the world, reminding mortals and gods alike that love is as powerful as any weapon and as enduring as the sea from which she was born. The affair of Ares and Aphrodite was more than a fleeting scandal whispered among the gods. It became one of the most enduring stories in all of Greek mythology, retold by poets, dramatists, and philosophers for centuries. Their forbidden romance carried a legacy that stretched far beyond Olympus, shaping how mortals understood love, war, and the strange ways these forces intertwine. At its heart, the story was about contradiction. Ares, the god of war, embodied chaos, destruction, and fury. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, embodied beauty, desire, and harmony. Their union was shocking, precisely because it brought together opposites. Yet this paradox was also what made their romance unforgettable. It reflected the truth that human life is full of contradictions. Passion can lead to conflict, and conflict can intensify passion. The scandal of their exposure, trapped in Hephaestus's golden net, mocked by the gods, gave the tale its drama. But the deeper legacy lay in what the story symbolized. It showed that even gods are vulnerable to desire, that even immortals can be humbled by love. The Greeks saw in their affair a mirror of human weakness and longing. Love does not obey rules, and war does not respect boundaries. Together, they revealed the timeless truth that passion is both irresistible and dangerous. Their children carried this legacy forward. Phobos and Deimos embodied the fear and panic of battle. Harmonia, the balance that follows conflict. Eros, the spark of desire that moves hearts. Through them, the union of Ares and Aphrodite shaped not only myths, but also the way mortals understood emotions themselves. Their offspring became symbols of the forces that drive human life: dread, longing, harmony, all born from the meeting of love and war. The legacy of their romance also endured in art and literature. Ancient poets wrote of their affair with both humor and seriousness. Sculptors and painters depicted Aphrodite's beauty and Ares' fury, often side by side, as if to remind viewers that attraction and aggression are inseparable. Philosophers reflected on the paradox, seeing in their union a lesson about balance, about the way opposites define each other. Even beyond Greece, the story lived on. The Romans reshaped Ares into Mars, giving him dignity, and continued to honor Aphrodite as Venus, the goddess of love. Their pairing remained a symbol of the eternal dance between passion and struggle, desire and conflict. And so, the legacy of Ares and Aphrodite's forbidden romance was not simply scandal or gossip. It was a story that endured for thousands of years because it spoke to something universal. Love and war are forces that shape every life, every culture, every generation. Their union was a myth, but it was also a truth that passion and conflict are forever entwined, and that even the gods cannot escape the contradictions of the heart. The tale of Ares and Aphrodite, woven through scandal, passion, and paradox, comes to rest here. Their story was never simple. It was a union of opposites, the god of war and the goddess of love, bound together by desire, exposed by cunning, mocked by the gods, yet remembered for centuries. In their romance, the Greeks saw more than gossip. They saw the eternal truth that love and war are companions, not enemies. Desire can ignite conflict, and conflict can deepen desire. Together, they embodied the contradictions of human life: tenderness and fury, union and division, harmony and chaos. Their children carried this paradox forward. Eros with his arrows of desire, Phobos and Deimos with their shadows of fear, Harmonia with her calming balance. Each reflected the strange legacy of their parents, showing that from passion and struggle comes the full spectrum of human emotion. The scandal of the golden net, the laughter of Olympus, the battles of the Trojan War, all these episodes became part of a larger tapestry. They reminded mortals that even gods stumble, that even immortals are vulnerable to longing, jealousy, and folly. The story endured because it was not only about them, but about us. And so, the saga of Ares and Aphrodite closes not with triumph or defeat, but with recognition. Love and war are eternal forces, shaping lives, shaping stories, shaping the very rhythm of existence. Their union was forbidden, scandalous, mocked, yet unforgettable. As the myths fade into quiet, let us take from their tale a gentle lesson that passion,